The Premier League is back with a bang, and so are Tottenham with a big 3-0 win over Burnley to kick off at the start of the season. And today we're going to be looking into how we set up and how we managed to dismantle Burnley 3-0 at home. All right, granted, we should be doing it, but nonetheless, there were some cracking goals, all thanks to Kudus and Solanke. But we're going back to the classic tactical board. I've been doing this all summer. Now the season's kicked off, we're going straight into it. And by the way, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Subscribing is so important because I'm trying to go on this sort of analytical journey. I'm learning as I'm going along, but I'm liking watching how we're tweaking things from game to game. And if you want me to roll out into other teams and other games, let me know as well. But for now, we're sticking with Spurs. And this is how we set up against Burnley. Obviously, just representing it in the 4-2-3-1 as it usually was, with the quite a young midfield, Sarr, Gray and Bergvall. Now, throughout a lot of pre-season, Sarr has actually been the number 10 in a lot of occasions. But that's because usually we've had Bentancur next to, Palhinha since he's signed. Even Bergvall, when he's come on as sort of a number 8, or a Gray's come on as an 8. But for the first half of this match, it was actually Bergvall that was sort of playing the number 10. And Sarr was a little bit more of like a box-to-box 8. And I mean, he was absolutely everywhere. But what was happening in this game is when we had the ball, what you'll notice is we actually almost ended up in a 2-4-4. It was very, very attacking going forward. This is effectively how we would set up when going forward with the ball and progressing up the pitch. Porro, Spence were having a lot of joys on the width against Burnley. And then equally, when out of possession and having to defend, we sort of shifted back to a pretty much usual 4-2-4 sort of situation, /4-4-2. However, there were some occasions throughout the match where we were defending quite a bit deeper. So again, when we were inside our box, it ended up being quite clustered. Ray would a lot of the times kind of drop in the middle here. Even Sarr would sort of drop deep into these areas. Let's say Burnley had the ball in these sort of pockets of spaces on the edge of the area, or even slightly out wide in the box, would end up coming quite deep into the middle. So Bergvall will sort of be on the edge of the area. Kudus and Johnson still sort of holding the width out wide. Occasionally Johnson would come in and Kudus helping defensively. But there were occasions, and we'll get to it in the match in a second, using examples, where we were defending quite deep. Unusual, because actually Burnley, to my surprise, had about 4 or 5 players pressing quite highly, but it did also leave huge gaps in midfield from Burnley, and I don't think they defended pretty well. And again, we're going to show you that with some examples just in a minute. But like I said, most importantly, we got a lot of goals, and it was because of this very aggressive 2-4-4 sort of build-up shape. Now, just to illustrate that properly, you can see it here in the average positions for the team. I mean, look at that. We've got Romero, Van der Ven, pretty much the only two back. Look at how high and wide Porro and Spence were. And then pretty much a very, very, very tight-knit sort of midfield. You got Bergvall with Richarlison. You got Sarr and Gray sort of a little bit deeper for most of the game. And then you had the wingers, Kudus and Johnson, quite high and wide. Now, if we switch over to Burnley, I think a lot of teams or a lot of fans would have thought that Burnley would sort of come and sit in this like really deep low block. To my surprise, wasn't actually the case, because last year in the Championship they had, I think, a record-breaking defence, so I would just assume that they would, come and try and sit back. But actually, you can see that they were quite narrow, they were quite compact, but their average positions are indicating that they were sort of defending in more of a mid-block shape and a bit further up the pitch to what I expected. It's actually very similar to Spurs in terms of the positioning on the pitch. There's no real shape there. And I think, again, when we look into examples, you'll see that their defensive shape was just all over the place. And like I said at the beginning, even though the midfield was young, they did the work. If we look at the distance covered for the players, I hope you can see that quite clearly. But obviously Gray was the one that was sitting a little bit more, so he didn't necessarily do as much running as the others. But Sarr and Bergvall were everywhere. 10.5 kilometers and 10.7 kilometers covered is absolutely insane, when the others are pretty much averaging 8 to 9-ish. I mean, Porro again as well, up and down that right-hand side, having a lot of joy. 10.3 kilometers run. I think it just shows how important these guys are, the engines that we need in midfield, hopefully alongside a new number 10 very soon. So we're going to go throughout the match now, starting, this is from kickoff, the very, very beginning of the match. Obviously, you see Porro, Romero, Van der Ven back here. I think Spence is slightly further up. The ball's gone straight back to Vicario from Bergvall, who is the one that took the kickoff, I believe. But you can see the ball is played out wide to Porro, and this is why I think Porro is going to have an unbelievable season at Spurs, because when he gets into these areas and he's crossing the ball in, something I wish we saw a little bit more of under Ange. And I know, look, he's still got some amazing assists, got some amazing goals, but his biggest asset is his crossing ability from out wide. And this early on into Frank's tenure, we are seeing that. So he gets the ball. He's already, and this is within the first seconds of the match, looking for a diagonal ball into the box. And it makes its way across to Brennan Johnson. Now, one thing we're going to notice throughout this match, which we're doing a little bit better, is our attacking play. Because I think throughout preseason, if you watched all those videos before, if you haven't, subscribe, watch them again. A lot of focus in preseason was around our defensive structure. We didn't actually see a lot of focus into our attacking play. Now, I did a video right at the beginning of the window when we first got Frank in, talking about his tactics at Brentford. And there is one particular thing that they do very, very, very well when trying to, come up against teams that might set up a low block and create chances that way. And that is crosses in the half space to the back post where there were 3 players waiting. I'll give you an example from the Brentford analysis. So this is what I'm talking about, right? It's the ball's out wide here with, I think this is Keane Lewis-Potter. 1, 2, 3 Brentford players waiting at the back post. And this would happen all the time. In the same phase of play, it's gone back out. They've gone out to the right-hand side this time. And once it gets its way to Mbeumo in these sort of areas, look at them. 3 waiting at the back post. Now, this is an example from one game against Man United, but this happened throughout the season. This is how they managed to get so many goals. And I think we're going to see a lot of them like that for Spurs. We didn't see much of this at all from Spurs in pre-season, but we did get a glimpse of us working towards it in yesterday's game against Burnley, which is what I'm really, really excited for. And which is why I think Richarlison, Solanke, Johnson, whoever it is we might bring on the left side, even Kudus on the right-hand side, I think they're going to get a lot of joy. And like I said, within the first few seconds, I feel like we're slowly gearing towards that sort of attacking style of play. Like I said, the ball went straight across to Johnson, and he's just about to get ready to whip into the box, and you can see Richarlison, Berval, even Kudus is arriving in. And to be honest, this is why I think we're not quite there yet. I think realistically, Thomas Frank will want Kudus already in this position at the back post, the 3 of them there. But we still get a very good chance. Johnson actually does lift a great ball in. Bergvall doesn't quite get the head onto it and it gets cleared, but then it gets recycled again. Back out to Kudus on the right-hand side. And now this is Johnson's turn to arrive at the back post. So it will be Bergvall, Richarlison, Johnson, and then you've got your 2 midfielders on the edge of the area ready to pick any balls that might get cleared. But again, the ball comes in actually near post to Bergvall this time, and it's a really good save from Dubravka. But like I said, I think this is a great example really, really early into the game as to how we're now starting to develop our attacking phase of play under Thomas Frank versus all of preseason pretty much just all being about defensive. Next up, yet again, another long ball from Pedro Porro up towards Mohamed Kudus. Now, this is leading up to the first goal, and to be honest with you, I don't quite understand what Esteve was doing here because the ball was pretty much going off the pitch. In my opinion, I think a more experienced player would have just seen that out. He kind of panicked on the ball because Kudus was closing him down, so he hits it long. You can see the ball over here. We're going to see this a lot today. Pat Matasar has had an incredible preseason, but he's shown it again today just how much of an engine he is. And he, in my opinion, is one of the best players at just collecting second balls and loose balls, and it was perfect for us today. Here's him again beating the Burnley player to the loose ball from Esteve, picking it up, passing it back into Kudus, and look, this is just a bit of magic. And this is what I mean about Burnley's defensive structure just not being right. They've got a lot of their players crowded on this side of the pitch for basically just Kudus, which I kind of get. There's a moment here where Kudus does lose the ball, but he wins it back and he gets round the defence. And I'm just looking at this. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Burnley players all sort of ball watching, leaving just, I think, 3 of them in the box here. But they just constantly left space between the defence and midfield. And I just think we exploited that big time. The cross comes in and you can see, look, 3 of them. There's no midfielders on the edge of the area. You can see one of their players complaining there. How Richarlison was able just to quickly move away from this spot to here to pick up from the brilliant cross. And it's a lovely finish for Richarlison to go in the goal. But it's a common theme throughout this match that Burnley's defensive structure was just not it today, and it made it quite easy for Spurs. Now, this is an example where I think our defence still needs a little bit of work, and we saw this issue in the Bayern Munich game. I did a video on it, and it was defending the edge of the box. So as you can see here, Burnley managed to get the ball through. It was a nice pass through the middle into Hannibal, who flicks it on nicely to their number 9. And okay, yeah, we'll see our defence sort of coming into that a little bit. I think our midfield is a little bit disjointed in this moment. And to be fair, Like I said, it was a good pass through the middle to sort of carve us open in this moment. But then as we move on throughout this phase of play, there's far too much space. We're too clustered on this right side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players all over here to their Burnley's free. You got one man by himself in the middle here. You got one at the back post as well. Johnson is, busting up to get back. But they find themselves in acres of space. And again, I feel like if this was a team with a bit of better quality, someone's able to thread that ball through into this gap here where there's a big space and they could be through on goal. The ball does go out there. It's a little bit direct to the player. It probably should have gone more into space. But look what we do here. Okay, we're getting players back into the box, but as soon as the Burnley player has it out wide, we go too deep, or like, should I say, all the midfielders and the defense all line up together and are not checking out the immediate threat. 7 players all sort of in the line. This is exactly what happened against Bayern Munich and where we conceded chances against them. Whereas look, you've got 1, 2 Burnley players waiting on the edge of the area. Bergval's caught on the other side of them. But I feel like Gray and Sarr needed to be a little bit more aware in this moment to know that there's 2 threats on the edge of the area, because realistically, I think Gray, you can see him here, he should be in this sort of position here to cut off any sort of passes towards the edge of the area. And Sarr maybe just shifts over this way a little bit so that he's covering off 2 players in the middle here. But what happens next? The ball finds the player in free space. He has a shot. I think luckily Bergval does enough to get a little touch on the ball because it does spin, and then Vicario sort of palms it over rather than catching it. But I think that was just one example where defensively there's still a little bit work to do when we're not quite clocking to the dangers on the edge of the box. Next up, I want to look at a corner from Spurs, and throughout pre-season we've said the same thing. We seem to have this play where Van der Ven is doing his job right again. You can see him here. As soon as the ball is about to be whipped into the box, he is on to the keeper. He's gotten away from his defender, and he did this against Arsenal, up against Raya, and he caused issues. We hit the woodwork twice against Arsenal because of this. And Van der Ven, for someone who's actually not that great aerially, you use his strength to put off the goalkeeper. Now in this corner, and it happened twice in this match actually, the ball gets whipped in by Kudus. We don't actually make the run to the front post, but he puts it in such a dangerous area that Van der Ven is able to get underneath it, and it kind of just goes over the bar. He was just a little bit too underneath the ball to sort of make this count, and like I said, it happened twice in the match, but you can see a very clear plan here. All players start at the back post. You normally have 2 players on the edge of the area. Van der Ven disrupt the goalkeeper, and then I think it's up to the rest of the team whether they hang at the back or make a run to the front post. But I think the delivery from Kudus was really good, and it was a good chance, which happened twice in the match, but unfortunately nothing came of it this time. But just interesting to note, Van der Ven, we see you. This is just a prime example as just to how on form Kudus and Richarlison were and how many chances they were getting in this match. Gray driving through the middle, finding a nice pass into Brennan Johnson, and now you see pouncing, ready to go. Richarlison running into the box. Kudus running into the box. 2 options here. Johnson could go to the back post to Kudus, albeit would have to be pinpoint accurate. He actually does a good job at finding Richarlison in the middle, who goes first time. Now, it does hit Esteve on the shoulder. Those claims to handball, it definitely wasn't. Manages to find its way back to Richarlison. He gets a nice little touch away from number 18 here to go into the 6-yard box. Has a shot, and Dubravka just gets enough on the ball to send it wide. I mean, it might have been cleared off the line by number 3 anyway, but Richarlison, I think, was just on fire today. Kudus then goes on, picks up the ball, and then the ball is getting whipped. Now, at first, I thought this was a shot. I wonder if this was actually a ball to the back post where you can see Bergval's there. I would like to see Richarlison be a little bit more proactive in this instance. And this is what I was saying at the beginning of the video about patterns of play in attacking phases, how Brentford did it. I think we need to be a little bit more aware. So you can see in this situation, Kudus picks the ball out wide. When we saw that from the Brentford example, if this was Mbeumo, for example, they would already have Wissa, Damsgaard, Keane Lewis Potter, or Sade, Keane Lewis Potter, whoever it might be. They would have 3 lined up. I think we haven't quite got the positioning right yet. I think Richarlison, after his attempt, was a bit more frustrated. I think if he was a little bit more switched on, he should already be back on side and in this position here. I think Johnson needs to be a bit closer to the edge of the 6-yard box as well. Because if this ball does come in, and if it is a cross from Kudus, then I do think that Richarlison could have gone on the end of it. But he kind of, because he wasn't on side, he didn't make a go for it. And I think Johnson to be honest, all the way out here is just really out of the game for me. So even though it was a good chance overall, there is still little tweaks we can do to improve our attacking play, especially when crosses are coming into the box. And look, you got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Burnley players in the area. It's really difficult to dribble past a lot of them. So crosses are going to be key this year, which is why I think Kudus, Porro, they're going to be great for us. Again, another primary example. Kudus, far right-hand side. You can see it a little bit better here. We've got Sarr, Richarlison and Johnson sort of all in a line. Okay, Sarr's coming a bit closer to collect in this case, which he does get the ball, knocks it back to Kudus. I think the defender gets a little touch on this. So it goes back out and recycles back to Porro. And now this is what I'm talking about here. Bergvall, Richarlison and Johnson sort of all waiting whilst the ball is out wide with either Porro or Kudus. Porro decides to play it to Kudus, and this, it was lovely. He waited for the moment where the player was about to go for the ball, and he flicks it beautifully past him. And this is, again, sort of what I was talking about. You've got in line, you've got Bergvall, Johnson, Richarlison. I think this just gives us the best chance to get goals if you've got 3 players waiting in that area, because it could take a deflection on the way through. The cross could just find the player like it does in this instance. But it was a wonderful, wonderful ball from Kudus to Richarlison, and then look, sensational flashback to him in the World Cup. A beautiful scissor kick into the goal from Richarlison to put us 2-0 up. Another thing I want to quickly highlight is Romero's ability to pass through the middle of the pitch. I genuinely think he's the best centre-back in the league when it comes to this sort of situation. The ball started with Vicario, plays it to Romero. Like I said about Burnley having a really, really disjointed sort of defensive structure, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 was sort of quite high up, actually. I know they're 2-0 down at this moment, so they have to try and win the ball back. But the 4 of them quite high up, but then the rest of them were quite deep. It left big gaps in midfield, and Romero exploited this and played a wonderful line-breaking pass to Richarlison. And in fact, throughout the whole of the first half, Richarlison was receiving this sort of ball from Vicario. He was actually coming deep a little bit to collect it from Vicario or a centre-back, because like I said, there was so much space in midfield because Burnley left that gap that we were able to play that pass through, and that is how you quickly get from defence to attack. Like I said earlier in the video, Sarr is one of the best players at winning these second balls. Richarlison does brilliantly well to hold off the ball, but Sarr pounces, is waiting, takes the ball off of Richarlison and is driving forward. And this is where you can utilise Johnson. This little moment here, I actually thought when I was in the stadium watching this, I thought he took a too heavy of a touch, and I was worried that the keeper was going to get there. But you know what? He gets there in just enough time. It's a lovely, neat little finish. And in fact, because of that slightly heavy touch, it invites the goalkeeper out further, and he's able to knock the ball past Dubravka into the goal. But like I said, these are sort of in areas where Johnson thrives. When the lineup came out, I was not sure about having Johnson playing in this game, because typically, like I said, you would expect Burnley to be a little bit deeper in their defending, and someone like Johnson against a low block, because he's not great at retaining the ball, he just barely had any chances in the first half. He was non-existent, and this is why I call him like the enigma at Spurs. He is a winger that doesn't really know how to take on his man, doesn't necessarily retain the ball that well, but he always manages to score. We said this at half-time, and he did it again today. I couldn't believe it. But it's these instances against teams that maybe will be higher up, because obviously in this moment, Burnley had to press higher up to try and win the ball back because they were 2-0 down. When he's got these acres of spaces, that's where Johnson can be effective, not just at the back post, which is why I found it weird that he was like starting today and not against someone like Man City, where he will have more time. But either way, look, he still manages to get his goal. It was fantastic from him and a great little finish. And what was the theme of this video? Crosses are key. Crosses are going to be key to us this season, with the likes of Porro and Kudus out wide, and hopefully some other players like Savinho and maybe Eze out on the left-hand side. But this is quite late on into the second half now. Obviously, Bentancur's on here with the ball, plays it out wide to Porro. I mean, look how wide he is where Porro's trying to attempt a cross here. And I think, as much as I'm giving massive praise to Richarlison, he was fantastic in this game, I think a lot of people are discrediting Solanke and what he can do under Thomas Frank. So far, all we've seen from Solanke is one preseason game against Reading. He then comes on right at the end against PSG midweek, where obviously he was poor. That was because Thomas Frank told everyone to sit in deep. We couldn't really see what Solanke has to offer, but this beautiful ball in from Porro, and Solanke is completely against what people say. I don't understand how they come to this conclusion. His hold-up play is good. He was showing his strength so much at the end of this match, because this wasn't the only ball that came into the box where he was able to do this, but the ball stuck to him, and he actually managed to shimmy away from the defender and get a shot off on his left foot, and it just went wide of the post. I genuinely believe Solanke is going to be just as good as we've seen from Richarlison in this match, and I think it's good that we've got 2 rotating options in that forward line. Frank knows how to make strikers do their job well. He's done it with Watkins, Maupay, Tony, Wissa, and Buemo. I think Solanke is going to have a great season as well, and I think he's been completely discredited by Spurs fans recently. Another one, Porro, cheeky little nutmeg to get around the player, plays a long ball forward. Again, it's straight to Solanke. He gets the ball. He's able to win the ball well in the air up front. Shock, surprise, Sarr winning the second ball. Gets played forward. Now, unfortunately, I think this was a bit of a lazy pass from Sarr because you see Tel here is in so much space. All he had to do was just play it in neatly here, and then there's a ball whipped across, and one of Solanke or Odegaard could tap this in. Unfortunately, he completely overcooks this pass, and it goes off. But we're seeing regular patterns of play and just how important crossing is going to be to our football this season, and which is why I honestly believe Richarlison and Solanke are going to have brilliant goal-scoring seasons. I think Porro and Kudus are going to get an insane amount of assists. And fingers crossed, if we sign the likes of Eze or Savinho that can help out on the left-hand side, we can replicate it on that left-hand side. Because the problem is we do have a bit of over-reliance on the right. When we look at our attacking map and our attacking play, the highest concentration was all on this right-hand side. I think when Johnson is out on the left, as much as he's great for maybe those through balls or maybe for tap-ins at the back post, I think when we're trying to build up play, because his ball retention isn't that great, focus so heavily on Porro and Kudus. It'd be nice to have the options on the left-hand side to maybe improve that there as well. So there you have it. That was my breakdown on how Spurs managed to dismantle Burnley and maybe where Burnley need to improve as well in their defensive structure. But next up is Man City. It's a massive game. It's a completely different game to Burnley at home. So I'm going to be very, very intrigued to see how Frank lines up in that match. I think it's going to be most likely Bentancur or Palhinha. We're going to need a bit more strength in midfield. And I imagine we'll maybe go for a little bit more of a defensive structure and hit them on the counter-attack. So I genuinely think Johnson would be much, much, much better in a game against Man City than he would be against Burnley, despite getting the goal. But you never know. Maybe we'll have signings by then. If you like this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.